Hello, I'm Mr. Pibbles, and welcome back to our Planet Coaster 2 Challenge Park series. Now, we are on episode 15, I believe, and in our last episode, we built this. I mean, alongside this lovely little pub, but we built this. A lovely vector return coaster that we need to do some theming of. Now, in between episodes, I've done a little bit in the background. I've kind of come up with this little fencing bit here just to keep people away, and I fenced off this little pool of water here, and I've sorted this pool of water, as well as some custom support work, which I am a little bit proud of, if I'm being honest. It looks okay. I think it might need a little bit more, but, you know, we live, we learn. But yes, so today we are going to be kind of sorting out this little plaza, and just a couple of bits around. So, without further ado, let's hit that time-lapse. Yes, hello and welcome to the time-lapse. I'm back here with you. It's me on the time-lapse on the Mr. Pibbles YouTube channel. You know, when we started off this series 15-odd episodes ago, you know, I was not expecting anything really, and to have, you know, a couple of subscribers under my belt now, I can't really complain too much about it. And it is wonderful to have you all here, even those of you who kind of just stumble across this and give it a watch. I am thankful that you are here as well. Now, you're probably wondering what we're up to this episode. Well, we are theming up this little plaza down here. I had a lot more plans of what I wanted to do when I started this episode. You know, when you start off the recording process, off and away, in-game, and before you've spent the full 75 minutes in-game, you sit there and you go, okay, so I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and then you get completely sidetracked by what ends up being this. And I can't quite tell you what this is yet, because that would be giving it away. And I don't want to give away the exact moment that I go, ooh, I know what I want to do with this. So I will simply cross that bridge when I get to it. But yes, we are currently here in game, playing around with this station building for our boomerang coaster, which does have a name, which again I can't reveal yet because that would give everything away. But I will say it is fun, and I didn't quite expect what I ended up with. So, you know, at this stage we're here, we're theming this up, and it's very safe. And what I mean is, you know, there's no real theme to this queue line or the station itself. This is just, in essence, a random variety of bits and pieces, trying to feel really as generic as possible, because again at this stage I have no idea where I was going with the theming or idea for this. But you can see me here getting in these fences. We are back with our good old faithful painted western fence. It is such a useful piece for this project because it just fits anything, and when I say anything I mean anything from, you know, the HMS Victorious all the way in episode 2 to the Pippleville Raceway we sorted in episode 4? Episode... I can't remember now. It has been a long... It's been a long time we've been doing this, and, you know, it all starts spilling together, but the Pippleville Raceway, the outside to this lovely trough around the thing, around our log flume, and now this bit down here, which is now completely full of this fence. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, it's very easy to go, I know what I'm doing, but sometimes it's even funner if you don't have a plan, and actually that is what I found while doing this. You know, I went into a lot of this series without a plan, and that's actually where, you know, I have thrived, kind of going, ooh, I could do this, or I could do that, or that actually looks really good. Let's stick with that, as I'm doing here. yeah, it's that sort of thing of, you go in with a plan, you end up overconfident, you do all of that, and I do think I'm gonna do sort of a proper plan series in the future because, where's the fun in not doing one? But at the same time, I'm enjoying just going where the flow takes me episode to episode. I had no idea when I built the pirate area how it was going to turn out, or the barnstorm where I didn't know what the theming on that was going to be, or even, as I say, this. I had no idea what the theme of this boomerang coaster was going to be. Hence why we end up with what we end up with. But yes, I should probably talk a little bit about the building itself. We've played around with a lot of kind of very much the concrete, which we've just continued to take along. I know it's technically lime plaster, but it's meant to be concrete, so we've continued on with that, and we've accentuated it with our lovely wood pillars, our aged wood roof, and the batten wood kind of exterior. And now we're adding some classic brick, because I thought that brick would just add a nice little bit of variety to the building, and I was right. We built this in the last episode, the ride, and we had the flyover element, and I really wanted the integrity of that to be kept. And as much as I would have liked it to go through a ride building, that's ultimately what we didn't end up doing. But I think, it's that element of, okay, we could have done this, we could have done that, but actually it wouldn't have worked as well as it did. And, I'm really happy with how this ride ends up. And continuing on with this classic brick, now adding a coarsened trim around the bottom, it just looks quite nice, if I'm being honest. Again, very generic theming wise, very safe, but again, I think it just works. And again, getting it in here on this on the slope just adds. And then adding again a little bit of coarse onto the thing just caps off the wall and makes it look a little bit nicer. Now, Magic Man, where are we going next? Because it would be entirely unrealistic for me to know exactly where my series is going. Just adding in some more fences here and there, kind of capping off that bit there, and adding fences around the path. It's one of the fun things about queue lines. You can get your paths in, and then you get to put fences around them, and sometimes it looks great, and sometimes it doesn't, and I think this is one of the times where it does look, if I'm being honest, quite okay. And again, once we get full theming around this, not that full theming is the goal here, but once we get a little bit more theming around this, it does end up looking a lot better than, just wood. And again, I can tell you that between episodes, I do a little bit more on this, kind of off camera after this, and we ultimately do get a ride sign in here, and I like what I've done with that, very much in the same way that we did the Barnstormer sign and the Pibbleville Raceway sign, but that is something we can look at in the next episode, as we are at the moment just here again putting these fences in. And I suppose I should probably tell you a little bit about the roller coaster itself. Of course, it is a boomerang, or a return as they're known in the game. It gets to one point, it goes back, it does that. That's basically what it does. It's got a couple of inversions, and I know it's not necessarily the next step one might take when making a park like this. We've got a kiddie coaster, and then you probably usually expect a wooden coaster or like a smaller looping coaster or something simple like that, but I just really wanted to get something like this in, something that would work with the terrain, and that we could work, that would be rather compact and just look quite nice, and I think that is what we've come out with. So we're now working on the little pool. At this point, I still don't have an idea of what theme we're going to use, but we are kind of getting in bits of fencing, bits of hedge here and there that don't look right. But, you know, I wonder when we're going to figure out what we're doing, because we're going very much without a plan here. Now, we're putting in some heather in the queue line just because it looks quite nice. You know, it adds that pop of colour, which is so sorely needed. I say that now, I won't be saying that later. But there we go, that is a joke that I can laugh at, having completely finished it. And that is a joke that I can say having, you know, completely have an idea of what happens by the end of this, because, you know, it's fun putting in these bits of plant and going, okay, where's it going to go next, and not quite having a clue. And I think that's sometimes one of the nicest things about this game, is you start off with something, you go, I don't know how this is going to end, but I'm just going to see it through. And that little path that we've sent out that way, we're, well, while it doesn't have much there yet, that's ultimately going to go off in that direction and look at whatever we're doing that way. But while we wait for that, we are here sorting out this. Now, this is one of the things that I wanted to do over the path of this ride, is put in some of these nets. So it's the sort of thing, you know, you'd put over the path just in case anyone drops anything, so that you don't, you know, get hit by a flying phone or something like that. And yeah, just putting this in. It is putting these in that finally gave me a vague idea of what I was doing with this park and with this section. But again, I will tell you what theme we're doing when it becomes a little bit more obvious. So yes, we are sticking in these nets here, and again, they've got a really nice style to them. You know, it's an interesting style we haven't played around with in this park yet, and it is that kind of experimentation which leads to the best results I've found. Like, you know, these, and I was just making sure that, you know, guests could wander underneath it, and thankfully they can. And putting the same thing under this bit of this bit of track here over this bit of path, just making sure that it looks quite nice. Now, the one thing I did off camera, I believe I mentioned it at the start of the episode, was making some custom supports for the lift hills, and that's not really something I've tried before. You know, you go through your life playing this game, and sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone a bit, which is what I found with the custom supports, because I've never done them before. And I think what I ended up with looks okay. The reason that I needed to do them is because it was just a bit of a tangled mess with the two lift hills being so close together. So adding in a little bit of variation to that and making it look alright is sorely what I needed. Now you can see me toying around here with another idea, which is putting one of these trellises, or nets as it were, or trellis, whatever you want to call it, over the over part of the track for the roller coaster. And I think it's here that I do start coming up with this idea of how we can properly get a theme on. And the theme that we go for is sort of a slightly more Japanese-inspired, kind of cherry blossom-esque coaster, which I think is the best way to put it. You know, as I've said before, I am a big fan of Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I've been there multiple times, and one of the rides that I have fond memories of there is Icon, which again has this sort of slightly Japanese feel to it, and I wanted to kind of, again, emulate that feel. So we're putting in a lot of cherry trees. This all started as a, I wonder if that would work, and lo and behold, it ends up sticking. Now, you're probably asking, what does this have to do with pirates? Why is it so close to the pirate area? And my my response is, it's my park. Shush. To put it simply, you know, it's that sort of thing of I didn't know, again, where I was starting with this. I didn't know where I was going to end up. And I quite like the fact that actually you can have all of these different themed areas that aren't really kind of majorly massive. You know, if this was something with like a Universal or a Disney budget, this would be its own entire area with about 3 separate flat rides, a dark ride, and maybe 2 coasters if you're lucky. But here, it's just a little a grove, if you will, kind of a small area that just has a little pool of water and a roller coaster, and I quite like it. And you can see me here again working on this pool, trying to make it fit in with the theme with these waterfall pieces. And I think getting in like a little bit of a waterfall looks quite nice. I know there are funner and more interesting ways to do this in game, with like tricks and tips and stuff like that, but you know, ultimately I think I like what we end up with. And there we add in a bit of a splash element that will go off at the right time, which is quite fun. I will tell you now that I end up moving where the trigger point is, because it just doesn't necessarily look right. But there we go. Yeah, this is the sort of thing that I was like, I wanted this to feel slightly scenic, but also within budget. So, kind of, we've got a little bit of money, we can start splashing out a little bit, but not too much. So, obviously here we've made the track nice, kind of pink and grey with these brown supports, and I think it just ties in perfectly, and putting that in just looks really nice. And I will tell you now that I have done a little bit of work on the trains for the coaster itself. So there are some, it does look a little bit nicer than it does now, so you will have to tune into the next episode to see that. And now we are getting on to the most tedious bit of the episode for me, not because it was difficult or anything like that. It was, well, not because it was annoying, it was just slightly difficult to kind of get this right. And I know people have done this before on the workshop and got it all right, but I wanted to do it myself, because that was ultimately kind of the biggest thing. It's one of the biggest things with this series, is I want to do things by myself and I want to make things feel quite nice. So we are doing a little bit of a pagoda. And I know kind of they're usually in more of a red colour, but I wanted to do them here in sort of the white and brown, just to make it feel more interesting and more like it fit in with the area. So kind of we've got very much this white and brown and light pink going on throughout this area. And I think using kind of the white and the brown as kind of the base for this worked quite well. You can see me trying my best to find something that worked, maybe door-wise on it, but ultimately, you know, attempts are futile. It doesn't necessarily look the best there, but moving on up, every good building like this needs multiple layers, and you know, that's where this roof comes in. And it is actually the roof, a roof from the Mythology pack, which is quite fun, but it had the sort of style that I was wanting to go for. And the caps that you could put on it actually turned up at the end, which were, it just looks kind of exactly how I almost pictured it in my mind. And again, we're putting in these plaster walls around here, slightly smaller than, you know, I tried earlier, but I think it's the slightly smaller that works better, because you don't want it to be too tall, too imposing, but you want it to look quite nice. And getting these wooden beams in at the corners to kind of make it look and feel just a little bit nicer, if you will, as it were. But yes, just getting this in here for, you know, essentially what is a basic template that I can then replicate and make bigger and all of that. Obviously, I know it's a lot of kind of going back and making and deleting and stuff like that, but ultimately, I think you'll enjoy what we end up with kind of getting into this. So I could have just stopped here with the 2 levels, but I felt like that was a little bit too small. And so you can see me here trying my hardest to kind of get another level in and another level on top of that, and it looks quite nice from further back. And getting in these roof trims was the cherry on top of the cake, if you will. Kind of, again, they've got that cap on the end that just kind of raises up a little bit and kind of adds a little bit of a swoop, I think is the way that I'd put it, and just adding that onto there and taking a look at it from a little bit further back, it looks brilliant, and I do just like the way that it looks. And again, it doesn't necessarily look the most kind of realistic or detailed, but it doesn't need to be, because this isn't that sort of park. You know, they'd get it in, they'd make it look okay, and then but you wouldn't necessarily need it to be massive, so hence why I'm just putting a little bit of a spire on top, and it looks really nice, which I will say was a surprise to me when I first kind of built it. And I go through the question of, do I add things like windows, things like that, but ultimately, you know, windows don't look right on this. I think it looks good as it is, hence why we come back here and we have a little bit of a look. Now I have seen that people can use those apple pieces as bits of gravel and stuff, but that would take a little bit too long, and you don't want to see me placing gravel for, you know, years. So ultimately we end up with these boulder pieces, which are, again, an old faithful throughout the series. You know, what am I doing if not placing tons of boulders? And ultimately, you know, it just adds, and putting in more of these trees and just putting them around, and you know, this is all starting to take shape. You know, I can see it here, and I also have the joy of hindsight, so I know what it looks like by the end. And I am really, really happy with this. You know, this might be one of my favourite builds that we've done. You know, this and Spook Manor are some of my absolute highlights of this series so far. And yeah, I think it's time we start kind of talking about what's next. Because I'm looking at taking a minor hiatus from this series after this episode. There'll be one more that comes out, probably later on the same day that this one comes out. And then we will take a minor kind of break from this specific park, because I have something else that I want to trial and have a bit of a work on and see if, you know, you'll all enjoy it, which is fun. But that aside, we are moving on to something that I haven't exactly been the most kind of on for this park, is lighting. And, you know, I haven't been one to, you know, place down many lights, but I've been putting bits and pieces down here and there. And it's one of the things that I did on Spook Manor, is I lit it all up, and I've got a couple of lights in the pirate area of our park, but I wanted to try making something that looked a little bit like one of these lanterns that you would see kind of in an area like this. And does it look good? I don't know. That's your job to tell me if it looks okay or not. But again, we kind of start off by getting these all in around this box lamp, which I believe is from the resort pack. And then it's getting these supports, which are some of the better pieces in the game, because they can scale down so small, and getting them in as small as we get them, and then being able to, you know, take them and drag them across, just to sink them in, and, you know, it looks okay. And then, you know, you do it again, and you do it again. And ultimately, you know, from ground level, that looks really nice. But there we go. It's one of those things that I toyed around with, and I think it looks quite nice. And then getting a slightly thicker border around the edge with these bits that almost are too big, but, you know, who needs that? It looks quite nice. And I will admit that we are coming up towards the end of our time-lapse segment here. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I know I certainly have, and I will see you in a little bit after we finish playing around with these lamps in real time. So yeah, I'll see you in a sec. Well, hello, welcome back to Real Time, and yes, this is what we've done this episode. We have themed up our lovely return coaster here, and you know, we've got it all themed up lovely like this, and we've got this little area sort of complete, and yeah, that is basically all we've done this episode. But if you have enjoyed this, then please give me a like, give me a comment, possibly even a subscribe if I'm lucky enough, and I will see you in the next episode. Roll that outro.